A warm welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. A woman who left the United Kingdom to join the Islamic State group ISIS has lost her latest bid to overturn decisions by the UK government to strip her British citizenship. By implication, Shamima Begum, who flew to Syria at the age of 15 in 2015 with two school friends to join the terror group, is to remain in Syria as she stands no chance of returning to the UK. In the Court of Appeal ruling, Lady Chief Justice Baroness Carr said while the decision in Ms. Begum's case was harsh, it could also be argued that she is the author of her own misfortune. This is the second time Ms. Begum has tried to have the UK government's decision overturned, as she lost her first appeal in February last year. The Home Office argued that she was a risk to national security in 2019, and the military intelligence MI5 assesses that she still poses a risk. However, her lawyers have argued that she was a victim of child trafficking and that the decision was unlawful as it rendered her stateless. Immigration lawyer Dayo Fatina joins us now for more. Dayo, many thanks for joining us today.
Oh, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your audience.
Right. So first, what do you make of the ruling by the UK Court of Appeal?
Firstly, the ruling in itself is not particularly balanced, if I could actually use that phrase, balanced, in the sense that any Home Secretary, the statute, which is the British Nationality Act 1981, confers the powers to any Home Secretary to be able to deprive a person of British citizenship. The law is very, very clear about that. But if you are to take that type of decision, you need to now look at all the facts of that very particular case, look at the rules as they apply to that very, very particular person to take that decision of deprivation of citizenship. Taking that kind of decision is it could be very drastic and harsh. Hence the reason why any Home Secretary has to do that. But in this instance, this was some years ago, so roughly about 8-9 years ago, when that decision was taken by Javid, he did not take into consideration one very particular aspect of that very law that allows him to take that type of decision. You need to consider whether, if you take that decision to deprive, this person would be stateless, and that is the case we are dealing with right now. This poor lady, although she's now 24 years old, she's stateless, nowhere to go. So it seems that she's been given a life sentence, really, to remain in this camp in Syria. So in that instance, I don't think that judgment was balanced enough.
So what's the overall implication of her being stateless?
The overall implication of her being stateless is this. One, she's now about 24 years old. So at the time she attained the age of 21, she became utterly stateless. And what the Home Secretary did then was there was a challenge, that, look, even if you have to take this kind of decision, you need to consider that person's nationality. And where that you can't just take away nationality without considering where this person would be going. The Home Secretary's argument then was the fact that she could always resort to the Bangladeshi citizenship. But at that point in time, when he was saying that, the Bangladeshi authorities were not even prepared to take anybody. One, then two, she was born and bred in the UK and left the UK, at the age of 15. And now, for you to now say you would take citizenship from that type of person, despite the fact that she joined a terror group that she was not meant to join so many years ago, that in itself was quite unconscionable and very harsh, really, for the Home Secretary to have done that. So the implications are she's got no state to go back to. She is now, languishing really languishing in a form of the detention center in Syria, and nowhere to go. She can't go to Bangladesh, and she cannot come back to the UK. So that's the implication of her being rendered stateless.
And let's get your reactions, on the Home Secretary's comment, which says, quote, "We are pleased that the Court of Appeal has found in favor of our position. In this case, our priority remains maintaining the safety and security of the UK, and we will robustly defend any decision made in doing so." Let's be reminded that Ms. Begum's lawyers argued that the Home Secretary failed to consider whether she was a victim of child trafficking, being that she was 15, just as you said. What do you make on all of this? As you did say, she was just a child, barely, an adult when she went to Syria.
Indeed. It even beggars belief that the Home Office and indeed the Appeal Court never actually took into consideration the fact that this young lady at the age of 15, she was, there was evidence before the court that she was trafficked, to Syria, for sexual exploitation, really, and this was before the two courts that have, taken a decision on this, and they decided to actually ignore the fact that that was the case. They are not in denial of the fact that that was the case. What they are just saying is, well, the Home Secretary has that right, going by the powers conferred on him by statute, to conclude that she would be, she wouldn't be conducive to public good and a risk to national security if she comes back. But there's no evidence whatsoever that's been provided to show that this lady, if she should come back, and she's under surveillance and secured in a prison, that she will be any threat to anybody in the UK. They took that decision. They concluded that she will be a risk to national security, but that in itself is not enough for her to be still languishing in Syria. And regarding what you just stressed, to do with her, offending. Of course, that it was an offense. She's apologized. She's made it very clear that she made a mistake. And to treat somebody as being, a 15-year-old for that matter, as being incorrigible and not being able to change, and to languish in a refugee camp all her life, is such a very, very extreme, nasty decision to take, either by the Home Office or even the Court of Law. She is in a situation right now where she can, I believe, an appeal, should be lodged, for right to appeal, should be lodged, for the case to now go before the Supreme Court. The issue of the fact that that the rules concerning the deprivation of citizenship were not particularly and thoroughly considered by both courts. I think the only court that should now have the final say on this would be the Supreme Court. She wasn't actually given that right to even appeal, and to actually make a case to the tribunal, the special tribunal that first of all decided this case. There's also the matter to be concluded on her being stateless. That in itself is not allowed by the rules when it comes to deprivation of citizenship. The moment you are stateless, the moment there is a chance or possibility that you could be stateless, the Home Office should never ever actually have made that decision to withdraw citizenship, and that in itself is quite grave. I believe the Supreme Court should be the final arbiter to actually conclude on this matter.
Right. Is this a historical case in the UK, Dayot? Has this kind of decision been made before? Looking at, the peculiarities of this case, she was a teenager when she went to Syria. She has apologized. She's stateless. Has this happened to anyone else before? And, has it been, how did it end? Let me put it that way.
It's, in fact, it's quite strange and quite worrying that this should be happening in modern day UK. And in fact, it's also quite discriminatory Because could you imagine if this lady, this same Begum Shamin, could you imagine if she went to Syria, right? Take, for instance, a white Scottish person who says, well, now I now want to actually join ISIS and go to Syria, right? And eventually that Scottish person has now been found out to be supporting terrorism. Would the Home Secretary at that point withdraw citizenship from a Scottish person or an English person if that person happens to be in Syria? No, it won't happen. So that, in its sense, in a sense, the whole thing is quite discriminatory. It's in breach of the equality laws to do with to treat people equally. The fact that Shamin had dual well, they claim she had dual nationality. The Bangladeshi government has made it very clear that they don't want anything whatsoever to do with her, that she can't come to Bangladesh. She has nowhere to go. This would never have happened to a British person or to an English person who happens to be British or a Scottish person who happens to be British. They would never, ever have deprived that kind of person of citizenship if that person committed the same offense. So why should that be happening to a person like Begum? This should be considered, very thoroughly by the Supreme Court. It's in breach of human rights. That right not to be discriminated against, because you will not treat a Scottish person or an English person that way if that person went to Syria to go and fight to go and fight with ISIS and found out. They would make sure that that type of English person or Scottish person is returned to the UK. So why can't that same treatment apply to a person like Begum? It's totally out of order, really, that this should be happening in modern day Britain.
Right. To put it into context, you did, clearly state earlier on that she was born, in the UK. It's not as if she naturalized. So that really makes her, a British person. She's not like it's not as if parents brought her in and then, made a British passport for her. So how more British can she be at this point?
She was born and bred in the UK.
Yes.
She in the UK for 15 years.
Yes.
Before she, and we should also take on board the fact that she did not go to Syria of her own free will. She was trafficked at the age of 15. She did not know what was going on. Trafficked to Syria at the age of 15. She was born and bred in the UK. She's been British all her life. As much as they now claim that she can always go back to Bangladesh and claim Bangladeshi citizenship. She was born in the UK. So, and I come back to the point I made earlier. Imagine somebody similar to her, a lady who is a Scottish or English, Caucasian Scottish or Caucasian English, now going to Syria. Maybe she was also trafficked, or convinced to go to Syria at the age of 15. Would this same treatment have been meted on a Scottish, British woman who committed that same offense, or an English person? No, they would return that Caucasian English person or Scottish woman back to the UK for her to be tried in the UK, and they would never have deprived her of citizenship. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's in breach of the equality laws and in breach of the discrimination rules and regulations under the Human Rights Act. This should be challenged all the way through the Supreme Court.
Right. So are you saying that even though she's not been given a right, to appeal, as you mentioned earlier, this may not be the end of her legal battle?
No. I don't believe this should be the end. In fact, I believe that they should now apply for permission to appeal to the Supreme Court to conclude on the rules as to what the rules as per the British Nationality Act, how you could deprive a person of British citizenship. If a person is state-based, you are not meant to deprive that person of British citizenship. If the person, if things were not done properly, to do with procedures, to do with what they actually looked at, the evidence they looked at, there's no evidence, no iota of evidence whatsoever to show that this lady would be a risk to national security. She's apologized. She's made the case that, look, as far as she was concerned at the time she went to Syria, she did not know what was going on. So why they are now holding her in Syria, just to make cheap political points, to show that they are tough on immigration or tough on immigrants, and this should not even be applying to a person who was born and bred in the UK. And there are also so many other exceptional circumstances concerning this matter. Apart from her being 15 at the time she went to Syria and being trafficked, they are not denying the fact that she was trafficked. All they are saying is, well, as far as the Home Secretary is concerned, he could take that decision, to deprive somebody if he feels that that person is not of any good to the country or a risk to security. But they have not provided any evidence whatsoever to show why they feel or how they feel she could be a risk to national security.
Right.
So, of course, yes, sorry.
Right, so let me preempt as I just let you go. Supposing, it does go to the Supreme Court and she wins, at that time, what's going to happen?
Oh, well, then if she wins, she would then have to come back to the UK. If the Supreme Court should decide that, as far as they are concerned, the rules were not followed properly, particularly to do with the issue of being stateless, right? And the fact that she was 15 at the time she was trafficked. Look, she didn't go of her own free will. These are the things, the courts who decided that they believe the Home Office did what was right. She did not go of her own free will. She was trafficked at the age of 15. She was a minor. And yes, there is a case that she joins ISIS, but she did not do this of her own free will. So the court should actually decide, and I believe the Supreme Court will look at those rules very clearly and properly, possibly rule in her favor. And if that should happen, she would have every reason and there's nothing the Home Office will be able to do if the Supreme Court should rule in her favor that she is a British citizen, that she should not have been deprived of that citizenship, and that she should now be returned to the UK.
Right. Thanks again, Daya, for giving us, more explanations on that situation.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Elsewhere, the mother of late Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny says that she has been shown his body. The Russian authorities are pressuring her to allow a secret burial. In a video address, Lyudmila Navalny said that she had been brought to a morgue where she signed a death certificate. The press secretary said a medical report presented to the family stated that he died of natural causes. The deceased mother said the law required officials to hand over her son's body, but that she was being blackmailed as they refused to do so. She alleged that authorities were setting conditions for the burial of her son, including the place, time, and manner. Earlier, U.S. President Joe Biden had held a private meeting with Navalny's wife and daughter. After the meeting, the U.S. president wrote that Navalny's legacy of courage will live on in them. According to the prison service, Mr. Navalny died suddenly while out for a walk, but his wife believes the Russian president ordered her husband's death. Well, the Biden administration is set to impose a new slate of sanctions on more than 500 targets in response to the death of the Russian opposition figure. The sanctions mark the latest move by the U.S. administration to levy consequences against Russia and amid heightened tensions between the two countries. According to U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, the new measures would be a substantial package that covers a wide range of elements linked to the Russian defense industrial base and sources of revenue for the Russian economy that power the country's war machine. This sanction is the largest tranche since the start of Russia's 2-year war on Ukraine. Gears to the war in the Middle East now, which is still eliciting conversation at the United Nations Security Council. UN officials are reiterating the need for a humanitarian ceasefire as well as the unconditional release of hostages. They also touched on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where lack of access to food, water, and medicine is causing a huge risk to the lives of civilians.
I cannot stress enough how urgently we need a deal that will bring about humanitarian ceasefire and the release of hostages. I reiterate my call for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages and for a humanitarian ceasefire. In the meantime, I will continue to urge all concerns, including Israeli authorities, to address the key impediments to our humanitarian response on the ground. IDPs face acute shortages of food, water, shelter, and medicine. Communicable diseases are rising amid unsanitary conditions, and over 2 million people face extreme food insecurity, with women and children at greatest risk. This desperation and scarcity has led to a near-total breakdown in law and order. Essential services have been heavily impacted by the fighting. 84% of health and education facilities are either damaged or destroyed. Over 62% of all roads and electricity feeder lines are unusable.
A new draft resolution by the United States ostensibly calls for a ceasefire. However, this is misleading at best. This Council should reject any resolution that further hampers humanitarian efforts on the ground and leads this Council to tacitly endorse the continued violence and mass atrocities in Gaza. The people of Gaza need a ceasefire not when practicable, but now. They need a sustained ceasefire, not a temporary period of calm. Anything short of this is gross negligence.
Temporary ceasefire conditioned on an agreement to release the hostages is the first step. Again, this is the best path forward. We cannot forget that 1.5 million civilians in Rafah and other civilians across Gaza would not be in harm's way right now if Hamas abided by the laws of war, did not embed itself with civilians, did not hide in tunnel complexes beneath hospitals and schools, and did not engage in other atrocities.
And on the front line, the Israeli military says it killed more than 10 terrorists during a large-scale operation in the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City, providing information on its military operations in the Palestinian enclave. It said it killed Hamas fighters by sniper fire and by means of remotely manned aircraft and combat helicopters. It also claimed to locate Hamas tunnels and weapon stores in the area. The Israeli military also said it killed more than 10 Hamas fighters in the western Khan Yunis. As it stands, at least 29,514 people have been killed since the October 7th attack and over 69,000 injured. That's according to the health ministry in Gaza. In the meantime, a Hamas delegation led by the group's political leader Ismail Haniyeh has left Egypt after 3 days of discussions in the capital, Cairo. According to a Hamas statement, the delegation met Israeli officials and the head of Egypt's intelligence service, Abbas Kamel, and discussed a ceasefire agreement which would involve the release of Israeli captives and Palestinian prisoners. Also discussed was the flow of humanitarian aid into northern Gaza and ongoing tensions at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in occupied East Jerusalem, where Israeli forces have prevented Muslims from going to worship in recent weeks. The White House coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa was also in Egypt this week for talks. Elsewhere now, at least 4 people have died and 14 others injured after a massive fire ripped through 2 joined apartment blocks in the Spanish city of Valencia. According to emergency service, 19 people are still missing as evacuations from the building is underway. The blaze engulfed a 14-story block in the Campanar neighborhood in Valencia and spread to an adjoining building. Experts say that highly flammable cladding on the building enabled the fire to spread rapidly. More than 20 fire crews tackled the blaze, which was made worse by high winds. And China is urging the United States to cease all interference in Taiwan's affairs. This was relayed after a group of 5 U.S. lawmakers led by Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher met with Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen. Speaking at a press briefing in Beijing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning urged Washington to consider the extreme complexity and sensitivity of the Taiwan question. She adds that China opposes any form of official interaction between the United States and Taiwan, calling on American officials and legislators to stop official contacts with the Taiwan and stop sending any wrong signals to the separatist forces for Taiwan independence. Well, it's a really bleak outlook in Germany. The country's officials released data this week that shows its economy is growing even less than previously expected. Well, for more on why the world's third largest economy is performing so badly and what can be done about it, we're now joined by DW's Mattis Richmond in Berlin. Mattis, great to see you. A weak economy in Germany. We've heard previously that the businesses are struggling. What's the latest on this story?
The situation is extremely challenging. That's what German Economy Minister Robert Habeck said this week. The government had been expecting substantial growth for this year, but had to revise its projection downward to a mere 0.2% for this year. That means the government expects very little potential for the economy here this year, and also the private sector is seeing very little growth prospect in the coming months. You have to keep in mind, Germany is an exporting economy, so with economic growth subdued around the world, especially in China, a huge market for German machinery, companies here are struggling to get their products sold.
And considering that Germany is seen as a manufacturing powerhouse, what will be done to revive this industrial spirit?
Yeah, this touches on the more domestic issues of the sluggish economy here. Economy Minister Habeck said that some of the low growth is down to the government having to save on its spending after a constitutional court ruling late last year. The government here is very restrained in how much it can invest and spend, and that creates problems if the economy is already ailing. On top of that come concerns about Germany's attractiveness as a location for industry more broadly. High energy prices here and the government's sort of unclear path towards transitioning in its economy had a couple of companies leave in recent months. But Habeck made clear the biggest challenge for growth will be its workforce shortage. He said that more than 700,000 vacancies are currently unfilled here, and obviously, if companies are short workers, they can't increase their output, and hence overall growth will be sluggish.
And you've just mentioned this lack of skilled workers. Let's dig into that a little bit more. Could migration help fill the gaps here?
Yeah, so the skilled workers story in Germany has been reported a lot lately. Oftentimes we think of engineers or IT experts as missing in Germany. And you know, that's true, but there are studies that show that it's actually sectors such as health, think of nurses, doctors, and education, think of teachers, but especially social workers, kindergarten teachers, that are missing across the board. And that has huge implications. It's become quite hard in Germany to find professional caretakers for children, which in turn often means that mothers stay home and therefore don't fill vacancies in the labor market. For the government and most economies, it's clear that the workforce gap can't be bridged without migration. But there are a couple of obstacles. The OECD estimates that there are already 500,000 of internationals in Germany who work below their qualifications or struggle to find work at all. So the German labor market seems quite hostile towards newcomers. That means not only will the government have to streamline its visa process, but companies will have to get much more creative in integrating migrants as well.
Right, thanks again, Mattis. Let's move ahead. The United Kingdom continues its drive to connect the Nigeria and UK markets. This time, its approach is bringing 9 known businesses into Nigeria so the representatives can observe the trade environment, consumers' taste, and connect directly. Officials of the Department of Business and Trade Mission have created a platform for exhibition for the invited businesses, an opportunity for the Nigerian businesses and consumers to also explore and possibly partner.
So what was meant to be an explorer mission has now turned out to be a proper trade mission where people are building partnerships, people are finding distributors. So it has been very, very positive. The economic realities in Nigeria are not, has not changed because of this mission, but then definitely we can see that there's a keen interest. And as I said, I'm with the Department for Business and Trade, and what my department does is facilitate trade between the UK and Nigeria. So for us, this is a welcome establishment if we can trade, if you can move goods from Nigeria to the UK and you can move goods from the UK to Nigeria, then definitely the economy would become better. In terms of foreign investment, with this particular delegation, definitely we see the possibility of investment from the UK into Nigeria. So take, for instance, for the likes of the retailer like Cartel Watches that are thinking of setting up shop in country. They want to come in country. They want to be able to. That's you putting money into the country, right? We have a brand that is not here today on this mission, but it's a brand that is popular. It's called The Body Shop, and we're working on a partnership. And they're also thinking of coming and setting up shop in Lagos and Abuja. So it's all very positive.
The International Monetary Fund is urging vigilance on monetary policy globally and says the job is not yet done when it comes to keeping inflation in check, despite some weakening in key economies. Tunisia named a new central bank governor last week and has indicated that the country will be modifying its reform program designed to secure financing help from the IMF. Julie Kozak, Communications Director, International Monetary Fund, says the IMF remains a strong partner with Tunisia and will continue to support the authorities in their reform efforts.
Because inflation has been coming down, but it's not yet at target or close enough to target, our line or our view remains the same, which is the job is not yet done on monetary policy. We are urging central banks to guard against a premature easing of monetary policy. And yet, where underlying inflation and inflation expectations are clearly and decisively moving toward target consistent levels, some adjustments of monetary policy may be warranted. The IMF does remain a strong partner with Tunisia and will continue to support the authorities in their reform efforts. Should the authorities express interest in a program, we stand ready to engage with them.
SAGE's most recent small business big opportunity report found that 78% of small businesses in South Africa reported an increase in their productivity compared to 68% in 2022. However, the ongoing and deteriorating energy crisis, the knock-on effects of geopolitical tensions abroad, and the cost of living crisis put a dampener on these positive prospects, and funding remains a challenge for SMEs, especially for women in business.
South African entrepreneurs seeking financing to kickstart or grow their ventures often find themselves facing closed doors from banks and venture capital firms. I had a chat with the Minister of Small Business Development here in South Africa, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, and I asked her, why are business creditors not fully supportive and skeptical about funding small and medium enterprises? And what is her department doing to help small businesses? And this is what to say.
To deal with the issue of access to finance. For example, our own government here in South Africa took a conscious decision that business must be given to women 40% of it. That's by government now, to say all of us on our procurement policies, we should strive to ensure that we meet the 40%. And the president has been vocal on that, and we are held accountable when we don't meet those targets. The second issue is that, for example, from our side, as the department responsible for development of small businesses, that must also make sure that it provides this financing through the DFI from CFA.
Some commentators feel that banks are falling short in making funding accessible to small businesses.
In the context of the capitalist economy, where the banks actually are in charge, the current democracy in the world is managed and manipulated by the banks. And the banks manage every system in their favor, in their interest. The banks are there to make money. You would have seen that even amidst the COVID pandemic, the banks continue to make a lot of money, and they actually continue to pay obscene bonuses to the senior managers. So the banks are out there to make money.
I would say there's still a long way to go. I wouldn't say the battle is far from over, but there's still a long way that we need to go. But at the center of this route that we have to take is a closer collaboration between women-owned businesses and the ecosystem they are operating in.
Government says business owners need to prepare for any eventuality, keeping budgets lean, innovate, adopt emerging technology, and prioritize adaptability. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Senegal's President Macky Sall has said that he will end his term in April, dousing fears that he was planning to extend his term amid a political crisis. However, he did not give a new date for the presidential election originally scheduled for Sunday, February 25th. Mr. Sall, who is wrapping up 2 terms in office and who has said that he would not run again, postponed the election till December, citing unresolved disputes over who could run. However, his move was struck down by Senegal's constitution court as illegal. It's unclear who will be leading the country after Mr. Sall's mandate expires and before the elections are completed. Mr. Sall said he was certain there will be a void. He said he would consider freeing his rivals, including opposition figure Ousmane Sonko, whose detention led to nationwide protests last year. And President Alassane Ouattara of Côte d'Ivoire has pardoned 51 prisoners who had been jailed for committing violence and crimes against state security during the country's 2010 post-electoral crisis. The West African country was plunged into violence after incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo refused to cede power to Mr. Ouattara, whom the electoral body had declared the winner of a disputed runoff poll. A report by Human Rights Watch said during the crisis that lasted from November 2010 to April 2011, more than 3,000 people were killed and over 150 women sexually abused. The pardoned offenders include General Bruno Dogboble, who was a top military official under Mr. Gbagbo. He led the elite Republican Guard, which was accused of committing several killings. Officials say the gesture of pardoning the offenders is part of President Ouattara's commitment to work resolutely to consolidate peace. In order to get things right in Nigeria, political power needs to be vested on individuals based on competence, character, and talent rather than wealth or social class. This is the view of internationally recognized neurosurgeon Professor Olawale Sulaiman. He believes in the face of economic hardship, there's great need for the people to put words into action by demanding accountability from office holders.
We are fundamentally put a round peg in a triangular hole. So meritocracy is something that we don't understand anymore. It has become, it's my turn, it's your turn, it's our turn, it's my people needs to be there. Let's go back to meritocracy where you put a round peg in a round hole. And then we have to decentralize power. There's no way the Minister of Health in Abuja will understand what's going on in Ogun State or in Imo State or in Anambra State. Decentralize it, make sure you empower the state, local government, and the communities to be able to drive things. The people, and lastly, the people must demand good quality healthcare. The people. There's no leader without the people's support. Our people are too complacent. There should be a way that the people can complain. And I want to encourage all the elites. You know, we can all stay in a corner and think we'll just create our own cocoon. But this is our country. All the youth form 70% of this country. I told some people the other day, look, if there are 100 of you and you all have the plan to jackpot out of this country, only 5 of you will succeed. It means 95 of you will still remain in this country. This is what you still have. So you need to engage. I wanted to do it just if I had want to show that you can be in the government office and do the right thing. And maybe then doing the right thing by me would then peer influence and get other people to get back on track. So that's why I do it. I mean, I think it was a good learning experience for me. I learned why Nigeria doesn't work. And I learned that democracy is hard when most of the population is uneducated, when there's profound poverty, And the politicians have managed to weaponize poverty.
To catch the full interview with Professor Olawale Sulaiman, do watch Diaspora Network on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. The digital asset market in Africa is booming, showing how much potential the region holds in the global crypto scene. And as more people and businesses see the benefits of decentralized finance, user trading platforms become popular. At the 3.0 Verse Summit 2024, the Africa edition, experts share valuable insights on digital assets, blockchain, and crypto.
As more people jump on the cryptocurrency and blockchain bandwagon, it appears Nigeria is leading the charge in Africa. Nigeria's rapid growth in the digital asset market highlights the country's potential as a critical player in the global crypto ecosystem.
Thank you.
And at the 3.0 Verse Summit, Africa Edition, it's all about giving everyday individuals and businesses the tools and knowledge they need to sail through the world of digital assets successfully. But it's not just about Nigeria. It's about Africa stepping into the spotlight of the global crypto stage. The digital asset market in the country and the entire continent is skyrocketing, making Africa a key player.
The investors who understand markets, who understand forecast, are looking towards Africa with a lot of expectation, because blockchain crypto is making Africa look important again as far as the global outlook is concerned. But it has not always been so.
By embracing digital assets and decentralized finance, also known as DeFi, individuals can have more control over their finances, be part of a decentralized economy, and protect themselves from inflation, which is the crypto dream.
Cryptocurrency is the most important innovation of the 21st century. And why do I say so? Cryptocurrency, for the first time, gives you the power of freedom, the power of ownership. And you can become a contributor and a participator in a shared economy. And this is what we all really want to see. Prosperity for everyone. There is no barrier to entry.
More individuals and businesses are waking up to the perks of decentralized finance and blockchain tech. And the result is a soaring demand for user-friendly platforms.
Statistics shows that in the entire Web3 workforce, we have just 12% of women in the Web3 workforce. And in this tiny percent, this tiny 12% of women, you find just about 25% of them that you can find in teams. That's like working like in specific leadership roles in the Web3 space. And I believe that there are so many other women that are like me who, from the moment you tell them about blockchain, they already think that it's something really technical. But then again, we're able to show women that there's so much they can do in the Web3 space, that even their normal skills that they have in the Web2 space, they can bring it here.
What we've been able to see is in areas like research, in areas like software development, in areas like content creations, of course also in areas like trading digital assets. These are some of the places, record keeping, land registry, and all that. These are some of the use cases that we've not been able to touch or take advantage of. Luckily for us, there's a national blockchain strategy. The national blockchain strategy enables or empowers an individual, businesses, public or private sector players to take advantage of the technology, infuse it into their day-to-day business. And when they infuse it into their day-to-day business, it makes life super easy and making Nigeria compliant in the area of emerging tech.
Nigeria is riding high on the digital wave, and the country's increasing prominence in the world of digital assets shows her potential as she journeys towards financial empowerment and digital innovation. With more people craving the crypto dream, empowering users with innovative tools, educational resources, and opportunities in the space will help pave the way for a brighter and more inclusive financial future.
When the market was at 41,000, where were you?
From Nigeria, Leslie Jumbo is an embedded systems developer from Rivers State, and he is also an innovator with many creations. From air clicks, which look like a handband that can give telepathic powers, to highware, a gesture control device that allows you to control your computer's mouse with hand gestures, Leslie's love for innovation pushes him to constantly design and build systems. Here's more in this next report.
Zane here. So my team and I made a device that helps you control your computer using hand gestures. Let's see how it works.
Meet Leslie John Jumbo, a passionate embedded systems developer and an aspiring robotics engineer.
So my team and I made a device that helps reduce carbon emissions.
He is also an 18-year-old in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, breaking barriers in the world of technology.
I've always wanted to build cool tech gadgets since I was a kid, so I always played around with batteries, DC motors, alongside magnets. It's been a huge dream for me since I was a kid, alongside my friends, who actually turned teammates or workmates. Seeing things I think of come to life is just heartwarming for me.
Leslie's journey into the realm of hardware wasn't a walk in the park. For him, and like many others, hardware is hard, but that very challenge piqued his curiosity. Through networking and then a tech bootcamp, he kick-started his career with a dynamic team.
As someone who has always wanted to be a hardware developer, I wanted to see such people around me too, but everyone in my community were into software, probably because there was no space for hardware learning, So I went to an event where I met the startup founder. His name is Richard Sodiye-Pepo, the founder of Technoville Innovations Nigeria, and he bought the idea. He bought the idea of making this bootcamp where we could learn robotics, AI, and IoT. So I met my friends there. We started to learn, but on a very basic level. So after the whole bootcamp, we went ahead to learn more on the internet. We became really close friends and workmates too. It's your plan to be able to speak with you. Let's check it out. I call it the vase. The vase has audio capabilities which helps the plant communicate to a human. Let's check it out.
Don't touch me. Plus, I need some water.
With divine creativity as their guide, Leslie and his team have created numerous solutions, with each one a testament to their dedication and grit.
Sometimes it's from everyday experience, and sometimes my friends and I brainstorm, but I believe more of that is from God. So some of the projects I've worked on with my team includes the highware. The highware is a smart pair of shoes that count your steps, track your location, as well as measure your weight. The weight measurement feature wasn't actually so accurate, but we're still, looking to see how we can make that better. We also have a device called the Air Clicks. The Air Clicks is a device that controls your computer using gestures. We made a first version and a second version. We also made a device recently called the vase. The vase is a smart plant vase that makes your plant to communicate with you through audio. So it could tell you if it needs water or if it needs sunlight. It could also tell you the pH level of the soil. Another project we built is the Reforest AI. It was actually a hackathon project, but it actually went so well that we want to further develop it. So what it does is it tracks to see if trees have been cut down or not, and reports to the database whatever it's seeing. It uses solar panels too. It uses a MPU 6050 to track the orientation of trees and measure the vibration of trees to see if they've been cut down or they're being cut down currently. To many people, it sounds very impractical, but we really want to see this come to life, and we really want to learn more.
In the world of technology where every circuit tells a story, Leslie John Jumbo's journey is one of passion, perseverance, and promise. And by facing challenges head-on and early enough, he is shaping his future in technology.
Such inspiration from such a young man. That's our show today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.